Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about The Sinner, Season 1, Episode 1. Actually, I didn't even see Season 1, it's a limited series. Season's irrelevant. Part 1, that's what it's called, it's just Part 1. So I assume it's just going to be Part 1, 2, 3, so on. It's 8 parts in total. It stars Jessica Biel, who's also producing it. It's a new show on USA Network. It is a what do we call it? A thriller, mystery, character
Yeah,
drama.
yeah, it's like a mystery thriller.
Yes. Well, obviously, it's a first episode, so we'll start spoiler free. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers about halfway through or thereabouts. And so, what is The Sinner? It is a story about Jessica Biel's character, Cora, who is a married woman with a kid, and she has a pretty decent job, seemingly. What with, I mean, it's a family business that her husband and her father-in-law seem to run, and she seems to be a part of that. She's having a, at least from the outset, it looks like a relatively normal and good, healthy life. But for some reason, unknown to everyone, including herself, she snaps at the beach and kills someone. And the show is then about, okay, why did she do that? What is the fallout from that? And then another one at the start, the second main character is Bill Pullman's character, who's a detective who comes in and he starts to investigate things, and he is equally kind of fascinated as to, okay, this isn't a normal killing, something weird is going on here.
Yeah.
And so that's what the show's going to be about. It's based on a book, and like I say, it's going to be 8 parts, so obviously it's a finite story. They've got, their whole thing mapped out. So,
Probably for the best.
probably. So, yeah, we're going to get into it. It's funny because I wasn't really sure what to expect getting into this. Like I have this kind of set expectations for USA, which are not Mr. Robot. Mr. Robot is the exception to the USA expectations, which are
Yeah.
typically it's going to be maybe okay but kind of bland. And I went into this, and certainly it wasn't hitting me with like a great sense of style right off the bat. Like the opening, it was fine.
Yeah.
It was sort of doing its thing. It was interesting the characters. It felt like it was intentionally having them like mumble a little bit. Like it felt like there was odd lines I wasn't quite catching because it wasn't interested in making everything clear and distinct. It was like it's okay if
I think also it thinks it has style at times. Like, the very opening shot, you have this top-down shot of her swimming in the water. And it's meant to be like, oh, this has got style, but then almost immediately after that, it's like, oh, it doesn't really. It just wants to present that.
Well, I think you're being a little bit too harsh on it. I feel like there is actually more styling what you're saying for the rest of the episode.
Okay, I don't think it's like bad. I just don't think it's got a standout style. Like it thinks it like it says it should do at the start.
Okay, you think the opening shot's a statement and then it doesn't
It
live up
never
to that
lives up to
statement.
that in terms of direction style. Yeah.
Um, See, you say that, but I actually think the violent incident on the beach,
Mm.
I actually think is extremely well directed.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's pretty good.
That is the moment where I kind of perked up because I mean I wasn't disliking it, but I was kind of like, yeah, I was just following it along, seeing where it's going, kind of watching this analysis of this woman who seemingly is having. I mean, at least at this point, all I'm thinking is midlife crisis. Like she's starting to like freak out because this is all life is, and she's, as things are seemingly bored. She's like bored of her life and like doing the same thing, the routine of it all. But obviously, I'm assuming that it's going to be more than that for why she had this violent outburst, and it seems to be hinting more than that. There's like these little flashbacks throughout the first episode that hint that there's a deeper thing going on here.
Yeah.
But like the actual violent outburst, I thought was really well handled, and the reason why I say that is the violence itself was quite visceral, but I think what really worked for me about it was the idea that it felt like it did just like it's a normal day in the beach, people are having fun, and then someone just randomly does something. It really gave me that feeling. Like I actually got
Mm.
that impression as it happened. It's like this just does feel like a random act of violence that no one can really see coming or explain.
No, that's fair, and I do think that moment is probably the highlight of the episode. In most respects, I think it is. It is the moment that's supposed to hook you on the show. I think
Well, of course it is. I
um,
mean, the entire plot revolves
it
around it.
is,
So
but like it's that's the moment that's supposed to go right. That's why I'm watching it. And I think to its credit, it is the best moment. I think the direction is pretty solid there. It's definitely the best it is. I think just for a lot of it, it's just kind of by the numbers TV direction.
I love it. Is I don't think it's. Well, there's a lot of little touches here or there. Typically, whenever it goes to one of the flashbacks, it tends to have a bit more style there. Like it's doing
Yeah,
something different with those because it wants to make a statement with them. Whereas the rest of it's kind of by the book. I will say, obviously, you've got Beale and Bill Pullman sort of as your leads, and I think they both do a pretty decent job. There is a kind of weird, almost overly natural quality to it. There's a lot of themes that come into it, and there's a lot of little awkward moments, which is actually kind of, if I'm going to sort of praise the show for anything, it's those moments that I kind of like, because for every moment that I thought, oh, this is starting to feel kind of dull, there'd be a really awkward moment that felt really genuine because it was otherwise quite dull.
yeah,
I'm thinking early on when I'm in spoiler free here, but just the husband is trying to initiate some sex, and there's a couple of really awkward moments there that felt really realistic and genuine in a way that I don't think I see often on TV.
yeah. I think that's kind of like why I'm a little bit mixed on this episode, where, like I say, there are some really interesting moments, but then there's like stretches of time where you're going, right, this is starting to get a bit dull, and then it'll do something. Like they are timed pretty much, mostly the right moments where just as you're starting to go, okay, it does something else.
Yeah, yeah,
But
I'm mixed on it as well. Like I wasn't sure how I was going to feel in the first 5 minutes, and then it kind of got interesting, and I was kind of getting into it a little bit more, and then it was kind of like it didn't drop back down. Like it was kind of like I was enjoying parts of it after that, and there was things that I quite liked, and honestly, it's hinting at the mystery of why she did it. Especially when it started to like seep in some of these different ideas from the flashbacks, and I'm like, okay, right, I kind of see what this show's about now. Beyond just like what they sell on the log line is like, oh, woman randomly does something on a beach, and why did she do it? Like when it starts to actually hint at the backstory, I'm like, okay, I actually get the title of the show now to an extent. Like I understand where it's maybe going and down this path.
yeah,
And that stuff was quite interesting because I'm actually really curious as to what, because obviously I kept thinking to myself, okay, she's having a midlife crisis, she's bored of this, she's bored of that, and then I thought of, well, once it hints at something else, I'm like, okay, there's something more obvious but darker that's going on here, and that's what's triggered that moment. And then I'm like, yeah, but is it that simple? Is that too obvious and simple for this?
right. I think that's the thing. I had the same thought because at that moment I thought, it's a bit on the nose. This it's not very subtle. And
Yeah,
then it like layers come by. I'm like, oh, was it on the nose or was that intentional?
yeah, I feel like there's more to it that you maybe can't predict yet, and I'm definitely in a weird in between place. It's kind of like I definitely didn't. This wasn't like some other pilots we've done where I've been kind of like, oh, that was dull, even though there was some stuff I liked about it. I actually like, when it finished, I was like, you know what, I didn't mind watching that. There was nothing.
Yeah.
I think it's not a tedious watch. It's definitely, it maybe almost borders on it a couple of times.
That's the thing, isn't it? There's moments that there's things in it that are like, oh, this is really good. There's some really interesting things,
Yeah.
but every so often you just catch yourself almost looking at the time, going, okay,
I will say this as well. It's relatively unpredictable so far.
yeah,
I feel like characters kept making decisions that. I mean, obviously the violent incident we knew was coming because it's the premise of the show. But even after that, like just decisions that are made, and then Bill Pullman's character when we move, like you think, oh, he's the typical cop who's just divorced his wife and he's having trouble getting over it. But then that goes in like a weird direction that I also didn't see coming.
yeah, and it doesn't feel cheap because it's not like random for the sake of it. It's more we just don't know who these characters are yet.
Yeah.
Whereas, so if you know the character and then it just feels out of place, that's when it's just cheap and weird. But here it's like, I guess I'm just learning who they are.
Well, I mean, the entire premise of this show is about the character doing something and then uncovering the motivation. So it's almost like it extends to the rest of the show. Like at least stylistically, where they're saying, okay, we're going to throw you in at the deep end with some of these characters, and then we're going to slowly make you aware of, okay, why is this person like that? Let's
Yeah.
explore them as the season goes on. Um, and it's kind of interesting. I think there's a couple of little thematic things that I liked as well. Um, Bill Pullman's character, the Detective Ambrose, at one point he's talking about how there's something weird with these trees because the ecosystem's not quite right. Like something's
Yeah,
off.
they've got a blight.
Yeah, and I thought that was like, okay, right, okay, so like something's off with like, and it almost just it got my thought process thinking. I'm like, okay, what's this show saying beyond just women's crazy? And I just
Yeah.
hit my pop shield. But what's it saying beyond this women's crazy and she killed someone? Like what more is there to it? And all that thinking, at least for this first episode, was keeping my brain engaged. But it's the kind of thing where in episode 2 they could immediately, like, it could go nowhere and I might just start to like dwindle and lose interest. Or episode 2 could be like, oh no, like here's another like twist on it you didn't see coming, and all of a sudden like the fire's restoked, and I'm like, oh no, this is like.
That's it. We've seen it go both ways before.
We have, yeah.
It could at this point go either way, because like you say, it could be a case of they've done everything in episode 1 to get your attention. They've got nothing left.
I will say this, obviously with the obvious exclusion of Mr. Robot, this is probably the best thing I've tried from USA.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd agree with that. Like, I don't. It's clear neither of us love this, but it just shows you the level of quality we're used to from USA, doesn't it?
To an extent, but I even think that sounds quite harsh, because I do want to say that this does feel like a higher caliber of show that they typically don't put. Like, it feels like it's got a budget, it feels like it's got a cast, it feels like there is an attempt at style,
it's
even
trying.
if it's not. Yeah. Aiming much higher than, Colony or Burn Notice or whatever else USA Network put out. Like, it's aiming higher than those shows, and I can respect that. Even if by the time we get a few more episodes in, or we finish it or whatever, if we get that far, like, if by the end I'm like, okay, ultimately I'm kind of disappointed. Ultimately, it didn't add up too much. At least I can respect the attempt of trying for something else. Which does lead to the question, like, is this something we keep watching? Do we continue this? And it was funny because obviously when we try a pilot, as soon as the episode finishes, as soon as I finish watching it, I'm like, sometimes I have a hell yes in my head, sometimes I'm like hell no in my head, and then sometimes it's like, oh, I'm not really sure. And this one, if it's on a scale, right? If 10 is hell yes, we're watching more of this, aka Westworld, Room 104, take some of those picks. And then a 1 is like MacGyver. Right?
South of Hell.
South of Hell is another one. No, South of Hell's a 0. That's not even on the chart. That's went off the scale. But if that's those numbers, this was like a and this is not a rating of the episode. I want to make that clear. It's not a rating of the episode. It's more about how do I think this is going to be worth watching and like worth finishing. It's at like a 6.5 where I'm veering into, like, I definitely want to try at least one more.
Yeah, I was at like 5.56 on that same sort of scale.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I'm in that sort of place, when we both are, we typically just go, right, we'll see how we feel as we're talking about it.
Yes.
And we typically make up our minds a bit firmer.
Yeah, because it wasn't straight in the middle. It was not, I have completely no idea. It was definitely leaning towards the positive side, but with some reservations that I could see this becoming repetitious and dull. It depends what they do with it in episode 2, because I'm not really sure how they advance this next. I can see the flashbacks, how they're going to work.
Yeah, you can see the detective side.
Because the flashbacks, we get I think 2 flashbacks in this, maybe 3 if you count the opening, which I think you might. And not the swimming, the bit after the swimming.
Yeah.
So I can see that each episode will get 2 or 3 flashbacks, and it'll build like a story, like the sort of the backstory of her life, or at least a childhood over the series, and I can see that, and that works. But I'm not sure like her going through the system and all that, like how interesting is that going to be, especially since it's only like less than a year out of the night of. When I'm like, is it going to feel too similar in some ways to that?
That's it. I think that's the part of the show I'm worried about most, because I think the detective side, uncovering it from his perspective, getting, every time he gets a new bit of information, we see stuff, and that side of things, I can see where the interest comes from.
Yeah, and I like Bill Pullman. I wanted to say that.
Yeah,
and I've not seen him in anything
too.
in a while, so it was really nice to see him pop up actually.
Yeah.
So I'm A-okay with that. So yeah, we're going to try at least one more. That's clearly what we've just said.
Yeah, I think two's, because like we kind of said, it could go either way with episode 2.
It really could. I mean, typically I think 3 episodes is a good number, but we'll decide if we're doing 3 after we do 2. But
yeah,
we'll definitely do
unless 2
episode
tanks
2
drastically.
Yeah, we'll do 2 and see how we feel after that, because I feel like there's enough breadcrumbs in here that are really interesting in me that I want to know. I'll talk about them more in the spoilers because it's more about things that come up. But
Yeah.
I am definitely curious about a few things. So with that said, let's go into spoiler. I wanted to make it clear if we're watching more before we dove into spoilers and just give that kind of. As for the episode itself, I mean, I said that 6.5 wasn't a rating of the episode. No, I mean, if I was rating the episode, it'd probably be more like a 7.5, maybe even stretching to. Nah, 7.5. I was going to say stretch to 8, but I don't know if I'd quite go that far.
I don't think it's quite that far now.
But I think there's enough in there to sort of. I mean, I don't usually rate episodes on this, but if I'm rating this as a pilot, like 7.5 is kind of
right. And if you think of 8's kind of like saying like this is great.
Yeah, it's great. 7 is good.
Right.
8's great.
Right, and I think there's just a couple too many times where you're going, is this starting to get boring to stop it making an 8?
But the weird thing is, though, is that you're not saying, oh, this is starting to get boring. You're saying, is this starting to get boring? You're questioning it.
You're
like,
just on the verge.
Yeah.
You're like, another minute of what it's doing is like, right, now I'm going, right, okay, I'm getting bored.
But then it just pulls out something interesting, and it's
It
like,
does,
oh,
but it
what's
just
this?
makes me question it just a couple too many times for me to go that this is great TV.
But as we get more of this stuff, like, does it get more interesting, or do they not have anything else interesting to throw at us, and it's going to start?
That's the concern, isn't it?
So we don't know. But anyway, full spoilers from this point on for part 1 of The Sinner. So early on, obviously, like, it's showing you that she's like sick of going to her husband's parents for dinner, and you're like, okay, right, she's kind of bored with life and stuff. Okay, right, I can see what it's doing here. But again, too simple. But there's all these things when she goes to the beach, which, by the way, this is like the smallest beach I have ever seen in my life. Like, there's a wide shot of it, and you can see both ends of it, like where it ends on both sides. I just thought it was a really small beach.
Yeah. I've been on a few beaches like that.
Weird. I don't know. I'm used to beaches where you can't even see. Like,
Where they stretch for like a mile or two.
yeah, if you're standing on the beach and you look at either side, you can't see the end on either side. Like, I'm just used to those types of beaches. So the idea that you can actually I can walk 50 feet and that's it. We're done. It's the whole beach.
Yeah.
But she goes out to swim, and there's a whole thing where she goes past the boundary, and this was the small touches that I was starting to kind of like at this point, because she gets to like the boundary, which is the safe zone, and she like sort of like looks back and sort of questions it, and then she ducks under, and I kind of like that she's sick of being normal. She wants to like get out into the unpredictable territory. So just little symbolic things like that I was kind of appreciating. And she does the classic thing where she like ducks down and like holds her breath for as long as possible. That kind of tasting death, like for excitement, kind of idea.
It's almost cliche though at this point.
It almost is, but I think you're just being you're looking for things to complain
No,
about.
that one I did find, like, I was like, okay. I feel like I've seen it a lot recently as well.
I like the spin on it here though, because once she went down in the water, it cut back to like the husband and the kid. And it's like
that's true.
they sort of realised, like, wait a minute, where is she? We don't know where she is. It's kind of weird. And I like that because it kind of showed that no one else was really even noticing that she was in a rough place. Like, no one was noticing she was starting to break down or anything like that. Everyone was just kind of, oh no, she's fine, everything's normal. Like, because that's the thing, he's not like a bad husband. Like, he seems a bit dull, admittedly. And I think that's maybe the show emulating how she feels about him, because he seems kind of just uninteresting.
Yeah.
But like here, he's just kind of being ambivalent to what she's going through, and but so the violent incident happens, and she just like she's watching this boyfriend and girlfriend, who are like maybe college age, something like that, maybe mid-20s, that push. Like, I'm not sure which, but they're listening to music and they're having fun, and they're making out a lot. They're doing all these things, and she's sort of staring at them, and this is kind of where it builds up, and then eventually they put on a different song. And it's when this different song comes on, she kind of like gets up, and she's been peeling a pear. She's been feeding her kid fruit, and the knife. She's got the knife in her hand, and she just walks up, storms over, and just stabs him in the neck. And I do appreciate how kind of
it was very just sudden, wasn't it? And then she starts screaming like, get off her.
Yeah. Yeah, because after she kills him, because she stabs him repeatedly, and then she goes back up to her, and obviously the girl's scared, she's terrified of her, and she's like, "You're okay now, he can't hurt you now." It's like, and obviously you're minding, okay, right, so has she been attacked sexually in the past, and this is, because clearly sexual, there's a sexual theme going on here, because we had that whole scene with the husband trying to initiate sex, and her feeling kind of awkward about it, but going along with it, like, I mean, he doesn't really do anything too improper, but, Like I think that shot of like the crotches where he like takes her hand and puts it on his
Yeah.
crotch, and it's like there's nothing necessarily wrong. I mean, they're a married couple, but it feels so awkward and uncomfortable. And it again, maybe that's the show doing a decent job of putting you in the place where she is mentally, where you're like, okay, this feels like, because you could film that slightly different and it'd feel kind of kinky.
Yeah,
It's all
easily.
about tone, you know.
Yeah.
You completely change that, and so immediately you're thinking, okay, so she had some sort of sexualized attack in the past, which is obviously giving her issues, and she's acting out as a result of that, and you feel like, oh, okay, I figured it out. Right, what's the show
Yeah,
got for me now?
it feels like she's just projecting onto this guy.
Yeah. But later on, she doesn't seem to know why she did it, and I do believe her. Like, see, when she says she doesn't know, I actually kind of, I believe that she doesn't know.
Yeah, same. And I think that's where it started to get a bit more interesting. Because, like I said, in the spoiler free, there was points where it was like, okay, it feels a bit on the nose, like there, where I was like, okay, I get it. She's, she's projecting. It's just okay. This is it. But,
Do you know what I think works about it actually quite well now that I'm thinking about it? Is Bill Pullman's character, Detective Ambrose. I'm just looking at his name. I just because he's Bill Pullman, I keep thinking it was Pullman. He comes into it after the incident. He gets a phone call after the incident. And he's watching some woman from afar, and I think at this point you're probably thinking it's his ex-wife or something like that. It's someone who he's split up with, and he's been kind of stalkery, because he's the troubled cop kind of stereotype almost. But he turns up and he looks at the scene and all the rest of it, and he has that line about the ecosystem. But it's when he comes to interview her, and as she's telling the story, and as she is like admitting that she has no idea why she did it, and she doesn't want a lawyer, which I thought was interesting. She doesn't even want. Like, no, I'm guilty. Like, what's the point? Like, I'm guilty. Like his face and him getting interested, or not even interested, not the right word, but like curious. Like he's starting to like think this isn't fitting together. There's something else going on.
There's
here.
that bit where he talks about how she doesn't fit the profile, and it's just got his gears moving.
And I feel like his interest is exactly when our interest starts to come into it, because I feel like he's reacting the same way we are, and it's like watching him kind of look at these pieces and go, there's something not quite right. And for me, all on the flashbacks, and we'll talk about the flashbacks, for me, where the mystery, if you want to call it that, really got interesting is when he went to the witness at the hospital. He wanted to talk to the girlfriend, but she was knocked out. They'd given her stuff to put her out, and he talks to the guy, because it was the couple was with another couple. It was another couple of friends sitting there, and he sits and talks to this guy, and the guy's like, okay, yeah, well, this happened, and she said this, and he starts questioning, like, did she say anything else to you or to them? And he brings up this point where, well, you were sitting like 3 feet away and you never moved. Like the husband, because the husband, we see it when it happens. The husband rushes up behind her after a few stabbings and like pulls her off and like pulls her. So what the hell are you doing? And holds her down. So if he could get there, however long it took him to get there, you could have got there quicker.
Yeah.
And he brings it up, and that's kind of what makes him sit back down and talk. And he brings up this really interesting tidbit that I don't think. I'm actually curious to go back and check the scene now to see if you can see it.
Right, because I was just expecting him to say, "Oh, I was in shock."
Yeah.
Like I think that would have been if he'd said that, the tech would have gone, "All right, fair enough. I'm sure it happens."
Yeah. Well, he probably wouldn't. He probably would have been really stoic and kept pushing him for information. But deep inside, he'd have believed him. But he'd have just like, I'm not letting go. Just he wouldn't let it feel like he'd just won the conversation. He's going to.
No.
But he keeps pushing him, and he tells him that there was this weird moment where she goes, the first stabbing, like the first like stab in the neck happens, and the victim puts his hand up onto her shoulder. He grabs her, or her elbow rather.
Her elbow, yeah.
Yeah, and he's got her elbow, and it's like, and as they point out, he's a strong guy. He's in shape. He could easily, even with the stab wound, he could probably throw it off.
And with that, there'd be a lot of adrenaline going through him, so he'd be, be able to react.
Yeah, even more so. Yeah, he would be. Yeah, it'd be like a flinching kind of movement almost. And and then it's okay, that's kind of interesting. Why didn't he? But then he finishes the story, and it's like he looked at her face, and it was like he recognized her, and he let go of her arm. Like he basically let her kill him.
Yeah. Obviously, we've spent the whole episode being told that she doesn't know who he is. She'd never seen him before, and we have no reason to doubt that because it seems genuine.
And I still believe her, at least from her perspective. Like, I don't think she did
Right.
know who he was.
No, I agree.
And I think that's what makes it interesting. I think if they just swerve us like in 3 episodes time, like, oh no, she was lying, so she knew him. I was like, okay, that's just boring.
That would just feel cheap. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think obviously that's, I guess, the easiest answer, but it's the least interesting.
It doesn't feel right.
It doesn't.
Like, the reason why this is interesting to me is that she doesn't know him, and she does it randomly. But for some reason, he like that because this is the thing I wasn't expecting. This was the unpredictable part where I did not see this coming at all. Where it's like, no, he kind of had this moment where he decided to let her kill him,
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, so it's not all on her then. There's something also weird about the victim.
yeah.
And
Something weird about the situation in general.
Yeah, which at that point makes me go, okay, what else is going on here? What's the story behind this? So as much as we're getting flashbacks, maybe like setting up some of her psychosis and maybe why she has the the potential to snap, like that still wouldn't explain the victim's reaction.
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
So I don't know. That's the part that really like. I think I enjoyed the actual violent scene. I thought that was really well handled and how it was executed. No pun intended. And then but it was this scene though when these details came up about the victim letting her do it that I went, oh, okay, I'm intrigued now. What does
I
this
think
mean?
up till this point, I was probably leaning towards, it's all right, but I don't really need to watch it anymore. It felt like, up till this point, it felt like, okay, it's another mystery, just a mystery thriller, and that's okay. Like why she did it, but then when it got to here, I was like, oh, there's much more going on. This is suddenly far more interesting, and I'm more intrigued to watch another episode.
Yeah. This immediately became more intriguing. So the flashbacks, we get a couple of them. We get this sense that she's close with her father. Her father's kind of, and obviously the way that was filmed, I kept thinking, especially since at this point they'd already hinted like the sexual violence in the past. I'm like, oh god, is that her father? Is her father a weirdo, creepy, sex perv man? And that's a technical term, by the way. But like so, and all he's doing is like saying goodnight to her, and he like kisses her on her head. But it goes into slow motion as he kisses her on the head, and I'm like,
it's just playing with our expectations, isn't it?
That's the thing. I'm not convinced he is, but I think the show is playing with the idea that we might think that.
I think the same. Where they know that we're going to be looking for it because they've planted the idea, and they're just playing it up, which makes me think he's probably not. And is perfectly innocent.
He's probably the best dad in the world.
Well, if you look at that moment without that in your mind, it plays perfectly innocently.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's only because they know you're thinking it that it's played up.
They've planted a seed and then they use that slow motion technique, and you add those together, and it's like, what's going on?
Which kind of makes me, if it turns out it is just him, I think I'd be a little bit disappointed because it would feel.
It can't just be him.
No, it can't be.
We've got another flashback to talk about, which introduces a whole nother element to this.
I'm saying if it had have been, like, I would have been really disappointed because it would be like, that would just feel like they'd been really obvious instead and just on the nose again.
Yeah, but at least from this point on, there's no reason to assume they are just being on the nose because it seems like they're hinting at bigger things.
Every time I think they're just being on the nose, and I'm like, okay, they give me something else.
Yeah, because the other flashback it introduces, we see her mother, and we see that she's got a. Was it a little sister or a little brother? I can't remember the sex of
Sister,
the baby.
I think.
Sorry?
Sister, maybe?
Sister? Yeah. I don't know if it even
She
matters.
definitely had a sister, because when they were doing the prayer, I don't know if that was another sister, though.
Oh, that would have been that sister. You're right, yeah. I just couldn't remember what they said.
Yeah.
But, so we find out that the sister, and the reason why they were praying in the previous scene is because there was complications at birth. And I actually thought the mother was being quite cruel. She was kind of laying it all on Cora, because she was like, yeah, when I gave birth to you, you were a rough birth, and you took all my energy, and you left nothing for anyone else. So this is why your little sister's sick. And I'm like, damn, don't put it all on her.
No, that's pretty rough, isn't it?
But you see the baby, and the baby looks
terrible.
Unhealthy. I'll say.
No,
I'll say unhealthy.
Just looks terrible.
But this is where the religion comes into it, where she's like, oh, so we have to pray, and I prayed harder than I ever did, when I was waiting in that hospital, and now because your sister was saved, anything that God expects from us, we have to do. And that's
Yeah.
like, oh, that's why it's called the Sinner. Okay, I was waiting for it. Like, I had no idea why it was called that. Like, so up until this point, I was clueless about it, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, okay,
And I think it's interesting because obviously we know in the present day we know the parents are dead because
yes.
she says that to the police. And
What doesn't
obviously
necessarily mean anything. I mean,
it doesn't
it probably
it doesn't
will.
mean anything.
It probably,
It might not. Yeah.
yeah, it probably will, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Because I mean, she's at the age where her parents could just be dead from
Right.
any
Exactly.
natural
But
causes. So.
it's just the way she just says no, they're dead, and combined with this, it just makes
Which,
you think.
by the way, and there's no mention of the sister in that scene.
Not. So, which is, well, they say, oh, any family, any parents. She just says no, they're dead. So it could include the sister.
That's true. That's true. But what I'm saying is, though, it's deliberately worded so that it's
It
not.
is. It could be vague. Yeah.
Yeah.
She could be specifically just saying the parents.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And again, this though, admittedly, I thought the crime scene account with the letting her do it was the more fascinating part. But this was actually a little bit more. Again, it was building a little bit of interest. I'm like, okay, there's actually stuff to the backstory now. Where I'm like, okay, so why? What does this build to? What, like, I'm assuming she somehow gets her sister killed. I'm almost convinced of it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fair assumption.
Not intentionally necessarily, but if she is the sinner, which if she's the title of the story, I wonder, like, what does she do that makes her feel guilty? And it makes me think if there was a sexualized crime, it wasn't her that was the victim. It makes me think the sister was maybe the victim.
Could be because that would play into the get offer. Like she was being protective, and it wasn't because she wished someone had done it to her. It was more she could have done it for her sister.
It also makes me wonder how much of all this she remembers.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because if she has no idea why she did it, I imagine the traumatic event that's maybe
She's just blocked it out. Perhaps.
that's in there deep down. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder. I just thought of a twist actually.
Go on.
She's not actually Cora. She's the little sister. Cora's dead. She took her identity.
Why?
I don't know yet. They didn't explain it. I just.
You give them the idea, they can answer the questions.
Yeah,
for you.
exactly.
It's like, it's your job.
I'm just
you
saying.
deal with that.
I'm just saying, if we get to episode 8 and it turns out that it's the little sister who assumed the identity of Cora, I want cookies.
All right, that's fine. If that is the case for whatever reason, I hope they justify as to why and give me a reason. Why it matters.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I'm sure it'll be it'll be the traumatic event that leads to that, where she takes her name that is the seeding of maybe why she does what she does at an older age. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
It's a big swerve that you're calling already.
I'm just saying that it's just
It's a possibility.
It is a possibility. I feel like that's such a twist to do, and I've seen it done in other things, which is why
It is, and the problem is there's nothing that you can argue against it. There's nothing I can go, oh, that can't be true because of whatever. So, yeah, it's a possibility.
It is. It's a possibility. As far as all stuff, obviously the episode, she goes through the system. Her husband doesn't come to visit her while she's still in the the local station. He does go and see her eventually at lockup, and they have this really kind of awkward exchange where he's just shocked. He doesn't know what to say to her. He doesn't know how to react. He's kind of awkward about the whole thing, understandably.
Yeah, it's pretty fair.
And she this is the weird thing about her, is that I think after the fact, she's also quite sensible. She apologises to the cops repeatedly for not understanding what they're asking of her, when they're questioning her and stuff like that. And when she sees her husband, she's like, I get it, if you need to move on, you're entitled to that. And she's actually giving him quite an easy out. It's like, yeah, if you want this to be done and move on with your life, by all means, go do it. And obviously it's not that easy. You're still going to be in shell-shocked mode for however long, probably be at least a year before he's even thinking about anything else outside of being shocked about what's happened. So but I thought that was an interesting part of her character, where again she seems genuinely, it's almost like outside of the shock of what she's done, she is kind of back to normal in a weird way.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what makes it interesting, that she is normal. It's almost like if she's blocked out some event from her past, it's almost like she's already blocked this out to some extent. She doesn't She doesn't know what was going through her mind. Well, clearly something was going through her mind, but she doesn't even seem to remember saying to get off her. Like that. She never brings that up from what we see. She never thinks to say that she thought she was protecting her, which is clearly what it looked like from our perspective in the moment.
Yeah, it looked like that's what she was thinking. Yeah.
Right, but she never even mentions that. She never puts that out there as a possibility. So I don't think she actually remembers thinking it.
Yeah, I think she just has flashes of it in her head. Like every time she's like thinking about it, you see these quick flashes of the violence, but you never really get the sense that she understands or remembers the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if she's not remembering that properly, what else is she not remembering properly?
Right, it makes her unreliable, doesn't it?
Which makes Bill Pullman's character actually really interesting because he's trying to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And we've already seen in this episode, he uncovered something that we saw the whole scene. We saw the murder take place, and we didn't see this detail.
Right. I think actually this is kind of what makes it interesting in some respects for me, because it's not this woman insisting she's innocent and trying to prove her innocence. It's, the detective is almost on her behalf going, hang on, maybe she did this for a reason. Maybe there's something else going on. What's happening?
Yeah, and it's not even so much that it's not like he's trying to prove she's innocent per se.
But at least to see why. And I think cause she doesn't even seem concerned as to why. She's like, no, I did it. I'll get punished.
Yeah, he seems to think, okay, if she's psychotic or whatever, maybe she belongs in a hospital instead of a prison or whatever. Like,
right.
He's looking for the answers because he's not willing to let it rest. And I think as we get more of him, we'll maybe understand why he feels that, like why he wants to go out of the way to understand that rather than just write it. Because all the other detectives seem to just want to like, oh, it's a case closed, easy done. We can close that file.
And I don't think anyone can really blame them in this scenario. I mean, I think sometimes in TV shows you have the cops go, whatever, we'll just go with that because it's the easiest answer. But this time it feels genuinely open and shut. Like I say, they've got her confessing, going, yeah, I did this. They got 20 eyewitnesses going, yeah, she did that.
Yeah, like there's almost no disputes from anyone about anything.
Right, and it's like, does the why really matter from their perspective? She did it. That's job done.
And I think that's maybe what will be interesting from his character, though, is to learn why he is the man he is. Why does he care?
Yeah. Well, why does he need to know why?
And I think maybe something happened in his life that he can't explain. So he's not going to let this go because So let's not gloss over his. And again, going back to this idea of like sexual themes in the episode, and I imagine in the show as a whole going forward, is he goes to the woman he was spying on earlier. It turns out she is a prostitute, and he's kind of jealous because she's having other clients, and they have a little bit of banter about that. And at first it just feels like you're sort of typical. Okay, right. So he's got a prostitute, but he's going over there. He's having a drink. He's kind of a wreck. He's like had a stressful day. He's kind of wanting to unwind. But then it goes into this kind of a different path than maybe what you expected, where it seems like the thing here is that he likes to be dominated, or at least that's her shtick. That's the type of prostitute she is. That's what she does, or at least that's what she does for him. I mean, it's just, maybe every guy she sees has a different preference,
but that's clearly what he's getting out of it.
Yeah. Because she makes him, get down on his knees and she stomps on his fingers and whatnot. Like it's all very submissive. Like he submits to her, and I wonder if there's like a weird correlation there between submitting to a god and like a higher power and
it almost was as we were talking about how he needs to know why for things, and this is like, well, he can't question. It's just it just does what it is here. So it's almost like this is a way of switching off because he doesn't have to think about why.
Lot of meat to chew on. There's a lot of really interesting things in here.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just there's times where it's bordering on like uninteresting in certain like scenes, or just some things go on too long. So I'm curious as to how this progresses next episode. I'm curious as to what tactic it takes. It'll be a big sign for me because I think with the way this episode progressed, where I was like, okay, I was almost losing interest, and that's piqued my interest. I'm almost there's something else. So I was curious to see if will episode 2 feel the same way, where I'm like almost losing interest. Oh, there's something.
Have they got enough things to do that and keep that up every episode? Is the question.
Or alternatively, once we learn enough about the characters, does all the regular stuff in between also start to become more engrossing because we understand more of the the intentions and the motivations behind each of the, what they're
Right.
saying, what they're doing, and I can see it potentially going that way.
Yeah, and I think earlier you mentioned how, usually we give things like 3 episodes to give it a fair try. But I think here, when it's only got 8 episodes, if after two, that's a quarter of it gone. If it's not like getting me with the characters already by that point, like if I'm still going right, this is kind of dull. That's a quarter of its runtime gone, and I'm still feeling that. It's probably not a good sign overall.
Yeah. But there you go, that's the Sinner. So let us know what you think of the episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/mailedfuzztv. But otherwise, guys, that is us. So thank you very much once again for watching. We will see you next time. Have you got any vanilla?